I just need a minute to set this up. So it's a family emergency issues that she just hasn't had availability.
Okay. Do I have a motion then?
Well, I would move that we continue at the request of the applicant to June 27th at 6:03 p.m. with the understanding that this is probably the last time unless there's extenuating circumstances.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 That is continued. Opening the 6:03 hearing for Stephen J. and Jennifer L. Noxon, 11 Harbor Ridge Drive. This is for proposed amended order of conditions to modify a patio expansion, expand deck, landing stairs, and install a hot tub. So it's proposed amended order of conditions? Is that right?
We've been through this one a couple of times.
Everybody have their mics on? Yes.
Good evening, I'm JT from Mashpee Landscape, representing the Noxons. I went old school. So here's the plan. As you just said, it's an amended order of conditions. They came before you guys about 2 years ago from, it was the environmental landscape consultants were proposing a patio that now the Noxons are just getting around to actually doing. They had to do some interior stuff, so now they're going to the outside. And as they started to think about this more, they realized that they wanted to make a few modifications, that it really, the shape that the previous firm did was more just a blob, and they wanted to be a little bit more functional. And they were working on their deck that now needs to actually be repaired. So that's why they figured it was an opportunity to potentially expand the deck. I talked with Drew, which apparently I have renamed to Andre in the in the letter that I did. That I apologize for that. Well, we're not changing the disturbance area at all. It's just kind of reorganizing the space. But being that it was, we're adding potentially a hot tub and expanding the deck area, that making a proposed revision to the amended order of conditions was in order.
So you're adding this spa, is this labeled on here?
This was, the blob shape was kind of, I didn't put on the plan that was submitted, but it extends just pretty much the same area that the new patio is going in. That was what was being proposed the first time. The Noxons would like to add a hot tub off to the side, and then they expanded the deck. The deck was originally going to the upper portion of the house, that inside corner. Now they were proposing to try to extend it to the outside corner. So they're adding approximately like 6 feet onto the deck.
I'm having a hard time, sir, with the fact that I'm looking at these drawings, and you talk about, I see spas, but I do not see, I forget I just lost my word. The other term, you're proposing a what? What are you proposing?
We're putting in.
But you're proposing a fire pit or a.
No,
I'm
hot tub.
sorry, I heard something like
Hot
that.
tub.
Oh, you're proposing a hot tub. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I heard something different. I've lost it.
And
Okay.
expanding the deck.
Just call it spa here.
Yeah, spa, hot tub.
All within the existing disturbed.
I heard-
Yeah,
I heard
exactly.
fire pit.
We
Is
kept
that
in the
one
same,
that's being removed?
same footprint as what was before. It's just, like I said, reorganizing the space.
Any outdoor shower?
There is one that's on the backside, the rinsing
That
station.
Rinsing station, key word.
So we're not encroaching on the wetland.
No,
No.
just to give you just a background, I apologize if you can't all see this, but the plan on the left side is what Michael Talbot from Ecological Landscaping had originally proposed as the first amended order. It's 916 square feet of total patio area extended out. You can see the dashed line on that plan that shows the existing patio. This plan shows what the commission approved as the first amended order, which is an expansion. The current plan before you is still taking advantage of the same area that this previously approved plan was approved for, only it's a different makeup with a proposed spa, or hot tub rather, and then you've got the expanded deck, but the deck is entirely within the existing footprint patio already, so it's going over existing patio. And then there's some modification to the steps that are going up. They're taking a 90-degree angle right now up to the backyard from the driveway, and there will be a curvature type of pathway.
Yeah.
The question I have with the path, and I apologize for not, I didn't really get a good look at it until I went on site to see, but there's a couple of trees that they weren't flagged, and I see the staking for the pathway, but they're very, very close, and I don't know, given the width of the pathway, how you're gonna shove it in, or you're just gonna try and remove the other pathway and adjust the new one so that, I'm assuming no trees are going to be
Pretty
removed.
much, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
In laying this out, I did take where those trees are.
Okay.
And we maybe have to, this curve may actually be a little brought in
That's
to the
what I was
house,
thinking, yeah, because
but
that
I
one
like the
area is a
couple
little tight
Yeah.
right there. If you were just to completely replace with a new walkway,
Yeah.
you would interfere with that. That tree would interfere with it, so.
The part of the walkway is actually going to be, the existing walkway is part of the new walkway, so
Okay.
it doesn't really
Sure.
push out the full length of it. It's
Okay. So just for the commission's reference, this top left photo here shows standing on the patio looking down towards the walkway, and this tree here is what I was concerned about, but
Was it the small oak?
small oak.
Yeah, that is actually like right at the
Yeah.
end here. Yeah, we would be curving before
Okay.
that.
Okay, because that's also the area that's closest to the coastal bank too.
Yeah.
So you can see everybody see the dash line of the coastal bank that cuts in closer to that side of the property there?
This
Yeah.
area here.
Yeah. So, the reason I bring up that previous plan is because just to demonstrate that it was issued an amended order of conditions approving that layout, and this is just an adjustment of what's going in that layout. So, nothing really too different. Certainly no impact to coastal bank or any other resource areas. There was also vista pruning that was part of that amended order, the original amended order, but this is just relegated to the patio area. So,
Straightforward.
don't see any issues as far as any performance standards for coastal bank. The existing patio is already within the 50-foot setback to a portion of the coastal bank where it cuts in closer to the house. That's why it's an amended order and not an RDA.
So that spa is still within the original footprints.
Yes.
Yeah. And the retaining wall all done by hand, I'm assuming? Be done by hand?
Yep, because it's going to be modular. So it'll be modular, so
Modular,
yes,
okay.
it'll be all.
Okay. So minimal construction disturbance in that area.
Any questions? Does anyone in the audience have any comments or questions?
I
Apparently
motion that
not.
we close an issue for 11 Harbor Ridge Drive, proposed amended order of conditions to modify patio expansion, expand deck, landing stairs, and install a hot tub.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We don't get anything for that.
Opening the 606 hearing for James C. Atkins, John J. Weltman, Robert A. Volpe, and Michelle A. Volpe, 80 and 84 Punkhorn Point Road. This is for the proposed dredging and modification to an existing dock. At the request of the applicant, we have been asked to continue to June 13th at 6 PM. And this would be because,
We haven't received a letter from Division of Marine Fisheries, which is certainly going to be very important for a dredge project. Also, the Shellfish Constable hasn't had an opportunity to comment yet, and there were some other possible issues as far as what needs to be submitted for this to meet the performance standards for land under ocean that I have informed the applicant needs to be submitted, so.
Okay.
Well, in that case, I would move that we honor the request of the applicants to continue this hearing to 6/13 at 6 PM.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 It is continued.
Okay.
Opening the 6:09 hearing for Russell Lowe and Karen A. O'Rourke at 110 Wheeler Road. This is for the proposed installation of a seasonal dock. So do we have,
You're not here for Mr. Lowe, are you, ma'am? Are you here for 110 Wheeler Road?
Yes.
Oh, you are? Okay, they just
I'm
called you.
sorry,
Yeah.
Karen O'Rourke.
If you can come up to the microphone, please give your name and address for the record.
Oh, okay. Hi, yes, good evening. My name is Karen O'Rourke, and my husband and I currently live at 110 Wheeler Road.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Makes a difference.
so can you briefly describe what you're hoping, what you want to do?
Yes, I'm sorry I wasn't fully prepared for this. My husband was supposed to come, but he had another commitment. What we're proposing to do is put in, I believe it's 4 sections of a removable dock. They're 8-foot by 6-foot sections, and they're aluminum framing, and each piece of the dock, each section of it, clips on to the next section, and we'll be going out from the shore with 3 sections and then 1 section on the side. And the central section is filled with cedar planking.
And I see on the plans, it's actually a 4-foot wide, not,
Oh, I'm sorry, 4-foot wide.
Okay, here we are.
okay?
And then it's removable, so every fall it would be taken out and stored.
Drew?
So this is a seasonal dock application. As the commission recalls, we, some time ago, when it came to notices of intent for seasonal docks, I had made a recommendation that engineered plans not be required for that, but still plans drawn to scale, which is what you have before you. There is scale drawings accompanying the application. The reason for my recommendation of not requiring engineering plans is because there's no real construction involved, other than just placing dock pieces into the water and then removing them seasonally. But conditions will still apply, such as, where to store it in the off-season. And it is, Shumet Pond is mapped under Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program for rare species habitat, freshwater mussels. And the applicant did submit a fee to MISA, Mass Endangered Species Act, which Natural Heritage enforces. So they can do a freshwater mussel survey to make sure that the location of the dock is going to be in an area either containing shellfish or not containing shellfish, but they'll do an assessment to determine the best location for the dock and then ensure that it gets put back into that same location each year so you don't disturb new habitat if there is habitat there. So that process is underway. And you have the full description here in front of you. No part of the dock is wider than 4 feet, which meets our standards. And show you some photos as best as you can view them. Top left photo is of the house. Top right, looking down the backyard towards the top of the bank. Bottom left is the top of the stairway, access to the beach. And then you can see here, these are the aluminum dock pieces down here at the bottom of the bank. The resource areas are bordering land subject to flooding. There is no bordering vegetated wetland on the property. It's a straight transition from inland bank to sandy beach. So the sandy beach is the bordering land subject to flooding. And as per our regulation 27, we do allow docks and piers as long as they meet the design standards. And then we just condition, as I mentioned before, about off-season storage, and Natural Heritage will weigh in as far as where the optimal place for the dock to be positioned. So it may change a bit from the plan that you see there, but the most important part is that we know the footprint from the scale drawing. So that may shift depending on Natural Heritage. To me, it looks like when I went down to the beach and looked at the water, it's very cobbly and gravelly and rocky under the water, which is not suitable for shellfish habitat. See, they like the nice sandy bottom. So chances are Natural Heritage is going to issue a determination letter of no take and allow the dock to be where it's proposed. So that would be my guesstimation on their feedback.
Is that something we have to condition?
We could, yes, yeah, we could condition that. If it needs to go in a specific location, sometimes what they've required in the past is permanent footings under the water to ensure that the dock gets locked into the same place each year. But we'll just wait to see what the determination letter says. We haven't received it yet. So in your motion, I would recommend that you, if you were to approve it, you have to close an issue pending receipt of Natural Heritage letter feedback.
Right. And where's the dock going to be stored?
Yes.
It'll be stored under our stairway up at the house. It's portable. I think each section weighs something like 38 pounds. I'm not sure exactly, but. And you can take the wood out from
I was
the
going to say,
frame.
it's not going to be that with the wood in it.
No, the wood can be taken out and removed separately.
Okay.
Okay.
So, are there any comments from the audience? Right, so we just need a motion that notes that it won't actually be issued until the receipt of the information from National Heritage. And so that has to be attached to
To the motion, yes.
when that comes in, it'll be attached to the order of conditions.
Correct, yeah, whatever their conditions are.
I would move that we close an issue in regards to the application of Russell Lowe and Karen O'Rourke with the condition that we must wait until we hear from National Heritage in terms of the specific location for the dock.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay, good to go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay. So that concludes the hearings for this evening. Drew, would you like to get us going on the,
Yeah, repost.
Post.
Can we collect up those plans, please? When you collect them, just put them there, give them to Judy.
There you go, Judy.
So Rose Forbes is here from the Air Force if we want to do that pre-post
Sure.
agenda item
Sure,
first.
do it. They're waiting.
Great, okay.
Nikki Wagner is here with me also. She's the one who does all the works.
Just want to use the microphone to introduce yourself.
Okay, sure.
And we can pass out the, if you want to hand them to me, I'll pass them around to the
Oh, yeah.
commission.
There you go.
Sure.
Nikki, you wanna sit here?
Let me cue up the PowerPoint for anyone who can see the screen.
Testing. Doesn't sound like it's on. Caitlin, Brad, Dale, Thomas, and Marty.
Good to go.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for having us here tonight. My name is Rose Forbes. I'm the Remediation Program Manager for the Air Force Civil Engineer Center at Joint Base Cape Cod. I'm sure you've heard of our work before going on with the cleanup at the base. And this is Nikki Wagner, and she works for one of our contractors, EAEST, Engineering, Science, and Technology. And she's the one who does all the field work and the writing up the documents, and so she knows way more about this stuff than I do. But the overarching reason that we're here tonight is just to inform you about a site. I'm not sure if you're familiar with we call it MMRP. Are we picking this up? I just want to make sure I'm
Yeah,
talking
it's-
loud enough.
Oh, yeah. You
Okay.
won't hear a reverberation, but it's on.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, like squealing. Okay, so the MMRP is Military Munitions Response Program. I know that you've heard about our groundwater plumes before. You've heard about some of our source area sites. You might have read about PFAS in the article and the recent articles that have been out in the papers. These are a different set of sites, MMRP sites. It's where munitions have been used, and they apply to not to open ranges. So if there's active training going on, our program doesn't apply. Our program is only for closed sites. All right. So that's kind of the background slide here. Drew, slide 2 there. Did you have any questions first about? No. Okay. All right, so we are investigating 10 MMRP sites, and those locations are shown on the map on slide 3. You can, if you're familiar with the base, you know the base outline there. It's 22,000 acres. The northern 15,000 acres is where the Army has trained in the past. And so we don't have any MMRP sites like in the center of that area, but around the edges where they're no longer used for training or demolition or disposal or anything like that, or storage. The site that, let me see if I covered everything, just that this MMRP follows our CERCLA process. So you've probably heard about preliminary assessments, site inspections, remedial investigations. That applies to our groundwater plumes and our traditional source area sites. These MMRP sites, there's terminology is a little bit different, like a CSE, which is a comprehensive site evaluation phase 1. That's like a preliminary assessment. The phase 2 is like a site inspection. So the sites that the site I'll be talking about today anyway, we've completed the site inspection phase, or the CSE phase 2. So you'll see that terminology in here. But the two sites that of our interest in this discussion are the former Otis Bomb Storage Magazines and the the Ordnance Area 1. So those are down in the southeast portion. I don't know if you can, the southeast portion, you can see it on the map there of the base. And particularly the Ordnance Area 1, which actually straddles the base boundary and goes into the town of Mashpee. And the footprint goes over a number of property owners off of like Near Back Road. One of those property owners is the Mashpee Conservation Commission. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background first. On slide 4, the former Otis Bomb Storage Magazines, you can see that's entirely on the base. Now this site was used back in the 40s, 50s to store ordnance bombs for aircraft. And then when they redid the runway, they had to move that site away so that they could reconfigure the runway, and all the munitions were then moved over to the Ordnance Area 1 as a temporary storage until the final ammunition storage area was completed. Okay? So that gives you a little bit of context about how this one site developed. Now on slide 5, that shows the former Otis Bomb Storage Magazines, and this is where it was located on the runway, and you can see the historical photo back from the 55, it looks like, after it had already been starting to transition at that point. And then on the right-hand panel, you see that's where the current airfield is, the flight line. There's some buildings over there, why can't I remember the name of that?
Hush House?
The Hush House. Yeah, so the Hush House is over there, fire department, some other buildings. So you can see it's all been redeveloped. And as part of the investigation that Nikki did, we didn't find anything at the Otis Bomb storage magazines, and we didn't expect to either, given as much development as had gone on. And keep in mind, these were storage areas. They weren't used for demolition or training. There wasn't any aerial bombing or anything like that. They were just storage, so that whenever one of the airmen needed the munitions, they would go to the storage area, grab it, check it out, and take it away from that area. So that was a former Otis Bomb storage magazine. Did I miss anything?
No.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about the Ordinance Area 1, because this is what concerns your property. All right, and if we can just go over to slide 7. That shows the historical aerial photograph. So remember, we were moving, or the Air Force was moving the munitions from the former Otis Bomb storage magazines over to the Ordinance Area 1. And you can see here on kind of the top right-hand part of slide 7, you see the footprint of the Ordinance Area 1 in blue, and then you see how it extends off base. Now, why does it extend off base? That's kind of a question that we've been looking into. We are thinking that just at the time, the base boundary wasn't fully developed, and even if it were, it's almost like they would not have known at that point that they were on or off base. And that's really the only thing there's really no records that tell us exactly why the footprint is where it's at. But it's there. We know that there's the base boundary. We know back road. So of interest then is the properties between the base boundary and back road. And those include the Arenda Wildlife or Wildlands Trust. And then a section, you can see a sliver of the Briarwood Mashpee Association property. Then you see the Mashpee Conscom property. Mashpee Water District has their water tank right there. And by the way, they are planning on putting in a second water tank. I don't know if you've heard that. Yeah. And then there's this purple property, which MassGIS says it's the federal property. The town of Mashpee says it's federal property, but the real property on base said, no, it's town of Mashpee property. So we're trying to work through that. We're pretty sure it's federal property, but the records, again, are really sparse. And if you've ever tried to read deed restrictions or easements or anything, or license permits, real estate instruments, starting from the 1940s on, it's very, very difficult. Anyway, I don't mean to make light of the situation, but on slide 8 is it's a blow up, and it shows about the acreage for each one of those parcels. And your parcel is roughly 2.6 acres within the footprint of that Ordinance Area 1 site. So, as I mentioned, we're working on through the CERCLA process for all of these sites. We completed the CSE Phase 2, or the SI, and now we have to decide what we're going to do going forward. So, as I already alluded to, the history of the site was for storage, so you don't really anticipate finding anything out there. There's been quite a bit of construction. Mashpee put their new their water tower out there. No ordinance was discovered during that time. There's been a number of activities on the base, some new utilities put in, roads were put in, running track was put in, and there was never any ordinance discovered. And then as part of Nikki's work, you did a magnetometer survey. Mm-hmm. And some transects, and you can see those transects in slide 8. Those lines that run sort of northeast or northwest to southeast, those are the transect lines, and didn't discover anything, right? And not that we expected to either.
How deep does that magnetometer go?
So for that particular investigation, we were just looking at the surface and then noting anything of substantial subsurface.
Okay.
Ring off, and there wasn't any
Okay.
Right, until you got close to the water tower.
until we got close
Yeah.
to the water tower, of course.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so the two options that I'd like to present to you to help us satisfy our paperwork, we could look at doing something like a land use control. Well, let me back up and just say we don't feel that there's any digging necessary. There's no contamination at the site. But we do have to get to a decision document for this site. And if it were entirely on base, we're pretty sure we could convince the regulators to let us close it out with no further action. But because of the off-base portion, obviously there's a greater concern because it's private property. So there are two things that we can look at doing. One's a land use control. Now, it's not, I'll call it a paper land use control, because the Air Force is not allowed to put a land use control on private property, which makes sense, right? And nor can we offer any kind of, we call it UXO support. So if somebody were to dig on that property, like Mashpee, they're going to be clearing Mashpee Water District's going to clear a part of the area, and they're going to do some soil borings. We can't support UXO support. It's just a rule within the DOD, because it could be interpreted that if we're doing that, then we're acting as your safety people, and we're not allowed to do that. So what we do is we tell you that we give you the information about the site and basically say use caution, and if you feel it's necessary, you have to go and get your own support, your UXO support.
Question, ma'am. You know, were someone to find, in the unlikely event, given the substantial transects done with the magnetometer, we did find unexploded ordnance, who do we call?
Right. So normally, state police is first people you call. You've probably read in the papers, they respond to those types of things. But once it's determined that it would be there, then that would fall back into our contract. And then we would have to go out there and do a much broader investigation, much thorough investigation.
It
Right.
includes the removal of the ordinance?
That would include the removal of the ordinance, yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is there any time restriction on that, or is that just when and if it happens?
No, it would be, it's, I guess, I was thinking it would be state police that would remove that initial one because of the safety
Yes,
reasons.
they will respond and take care of it initially, and then if there's further investigation needed, then, the Air Force would contract that.
So I believe the state police is probably very well equipped to handle a mail bomb, but possibly not a 500-pound bomb dropped from a World War II bomb. So I would think that we would need support beyond possibly what
Yeah.
local.
Yeah, the Air Force would be responsible for
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So on the base, I noticed there are these little squares. Those are areas where you've excavated to do sampling, or what are those?
Go ahead, you can respond.
Those
are
were
the decision units.
Yeah, so they were
Samples, yeah.
decision units that we used to sample for munitions constituent. So basically the chemical composition of the bombs to see if there was any risk there.
Okay.
Nothing.
So the lines, the black lines indicate where our UXO technicians walk to look for ordnance itself.
But you have done sampling over a large fraction of that area, and you didn't find any kind of chemical contaminants or anything?
No, sir.
No, we did uncover some buckets that were filled with, runway sealant or something
Yeah,
along
some
those
stuff,
lines,
yeah.
and we cleaned those up, but, it was kind of just where they tossed them, these buckets, like you would toss paint cans. Anyway, so that was cleaned up. But that was really all we found out there. So getting back to these land use controls, so it could take the form of, we would write a letter every year just reminding you of the site being present. We could have a magnetometer survey done every year after the frost goes, because sometimes if you have frost heave, it can bring munitions to the surface. That's a bigger concern up at the old K range where there were smaller rockets used. So we could offer up those types of things, but that responsibility still is associated with that parcel, meaning that if you ever wanted to dig, you would have to do some UXO, you would have to get your own UXO support. If you wanted to ever sell the property, now you have this liability as part of your property. The other option, which may help us actually close the site if the regulators agree, and they've already alluded to this, we could do something what's called digital geophysical mapping, DGM. And the regulators have said if we do 100% coverage of using this DGM, which shows 4 to 5 feet below
It
ground
shows 4
surface.
feet, so you'll get a pretty picture of all the metallic anomalies in the subsurface, and we can tell which items, to a certain degree, might be potential mech or just scrap metal, and we'll dig everything. But 100% coverage, so we would have to
Clear
you
the
know,
trees.
clear the trees,
Yeah.
clear the roots, so that we can see everything in the subsurface there. And then come in and have UXO support to dig those metallic anomalies to see what they are.
Right, so that slide 10, so the slide 9 talks about the Lux, I think. And then slide 10 talks about the digital geophysical mapping. I included a photo of what it looks like at the site. You know, you've probably driven by there 100 times, but might not have, you know, looked into the trees to see how dense it is. But you can see the tree coverage there on slide 10, and that we would have to cut down most of those trees and remove most of the stumps in order to be able to effectively achieve 100% coverage.
So ordinance area 1 was used to storage of bombs. We're talking large munitions, not grenades, not the handheld weapons. So
This is aircraft.
it's highly unlikely that your magnetometer sweep would have missed. These are large.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Right. So that's why we wanted to come. And then the last after the question slide is just a LiDAR image. There was some recent LiDAR imagery done of the base, and it's just kind of interesting the way the technology looks at the Earth. It looks, you can tell, you know, raised features and lowered features, but you know, with this particular area, it just identified some of the old bunker areas. Right, and that was about it. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there and see if you, I'm sure you want to discuss this and think about this. But eventually get your preference on what you want the Air Force to do or not to do, as the case might be.
I apologize if you already mentioned this, but it says that you can also conduct an annual magnetometer survey. You said that the survey occur when there was a frost heave, but that you were going to do another one when that occurred. Sorry if I just missed that statement.
Yeah, so if we can't close out the site, then we would have some sort of a land use control in place, and it would be a soft land use control. It wouldn't be like an easement or something on your property. It would be more of just an annual notification that the site is there, just as a reminder to the property owners. But it would also be, we could do an annual magnetometer sweep or a survey after the frost leaves the ground, because that's when during the process of freezing and thawing, sometimes any kind of buried munitions can come to the surface. So then we can not guarantee, but you know, have a better feel that there's nothing out there on the surface that could cause a problem. Yeah.
And that would just be a matter of just asking to, or
I would just have it contracted.
contract?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
For an expense?
Yeah, we would take care of that.
Okay.
You know, as long as the property owners are okay with us going on your property.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the property owners at this point are the town of Mashpee, as well as this Conservation Trust, a homeowners
Briarwood,
association.
Arenda, yeah, association land, then Arenda Wildlife Trust, and then Mashpee Water Department.
Yep. What is a Shummet Corporation?
A Shumet?
Shumet.
Is that on one of our slides?
Well, it's not in that area. It's
Yeah.
elsewhere on the map.
Well,
Oh,
it's,
is it, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's further down. That's south of the property.
okay, so
Yeah,
it's
sorry
not-
about that.
not
It just showed up
applicable.
as a color, so Mass GIS
Is
automatically.
Briarwood within
Yep, that light green area,
green wedge that comes
that's
up?
the Briarwood Mashpee
That is
Association.
definitely,
Yep. If this is just a what-if scenario, if the commission, after, you know, absorbing all the information and looking at all the options, were to decide to do that, sorry, what was it called? The,
Land use?
land use controls?
yeah, involving the vegetation clearing.
Oh, digital.
Digital geophysical mapping, would the site be just left like that after, like, what's the follow-up there, if that was chosen?
Right. No, we would restore the site.
Would
We would
restore.
plant trees, you know, we'd work with you to ask what trees you want
Right.
to have planted, what kind of, you know, vegetation.
Okay, just wanted to see what the post-follow-up would be for that.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't want to leave it barren, like, right.
Yeah.
But based on what you have, the evidence you have collected, you know, doesn't seem that that would be be necessary, of course, with everyone's discretion, but that based on your findings, that you're not exceptionally concerned about this site, right? Okay.
You know, you can never say 100%.
Of course, yeah, of course.
But you can't say that for any part of the base. You know, this just happens to have,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a historical feature, a historical use. So we treat it with more diligence. But, you know, there's a lot of places on the base that you can't say 100% you're not going to find anything.
But the objects stored here were large. They would be,
Yeah.
it's
You would think the
reasonable.
magnetometer would certainly pick up on it,
I would
given
think
the
so.
size of the munitions.
Yeah, they
Given
would
the-
pick up on it up to 4 feet. So
Oh,
we
yeah,
would've
okay,
heard-
4 feet, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we would've
Yeah.
heard it.
Yeah.
I mean, given the fact that they're willing to do an annual sweep with the same magnetometer,
Protection.
I don't see the need to clear the
And as I
land.
recall, the mission of the various Air Force units that were there were not flying B-52s and nukes and whatever have you. They were flying much smaller aircraft and therefore probably carrying. I even wonder whether it's a half-ton bombs were being flown by the aircraft that I've seen over the years, and from my recollection of my days in the Air Force, the units were not the ones that were carrying the big stuff, the SAC kinds of units.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, there was the SAC mission out there, though.
was
Right, yeah.
a flying part of the SAC?
Yeah, there was it doesn't show up on any of these, but we call it the Christmas tree or the SAC ramp, right? That was put in because of the SAC mission.
Oh,
But do you know anything more about the ordinance?
might have been an alternate
No.
runway
I
and
don't
things of
think
that
there was
nature
any
that,
records.
if they couldn't handle their mission at Westover, they might have had an alternative landing location if they had issues and things of that nature, but I don't know that.
Given the nature of their mission, I highly doubt they would have let their ordinance get buried and forgotten.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, not much point in worrying about strategic weapons having gotten lost.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
And there's no pressure to come up with a decision now, or you can, it's your discretion. I would agree that I don't think the DGM is necessary, given, what you know about the munition size and
No.
the sweep already done.
No, absolutely not.
Continued monitoring.
That's a decent little stand of forest in there, of woods.
Yep.
It'd be kind of
No, I
absurd
wouldn't
to chop all
want to see
down.
it, yeah.
With the land use contract, any of the other organizations that are involved, owners of the property, do they also have to sign on to a land use control document simultaneously with us? So it is a collection, or that we all individually have to sign on to a contract?
It would probably be individual, just because they're individual parcels. I've talked to Arenda so far, and they wanted to go look at the site, but they were leaning towards not cutting down the trees. The Briarwood Association, I just spoke with the president today, and, she didn't have enough time to digest it for me to relay the information to you. Mashpee Water District, they're already planning on clearing quite a bit more because of their second water tank. No one has a strong preference either way so far.
We might be able to, if we were able to deliver a decision tonight, give some example for the rest to make their decision by.
Is there any signage that gets implemented that I guess would be fairly scary to people? But, potential unexploded ordinances, because I think there's an unofficial, I don't know this absolutely, but I think there may be some unofficial trails in this parcel that people may or may not walk on. I may be wrong.
Yeah, I just.
I know that they may walk along the fence,
They're
right?
substantial,
So,
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that would
Runs
be,
all along the fence.
so we would probably, I guess, and I don't know if this would even really make much of a difference.
You wouldn't want to
but-
sign that.
What's that?
You wouldn't want to put signs up there.
That says that? No. Okay.
Right, so we have put signs up around the old K range, because, that is a dangerous site. And we do have an example of a sign, but it is very scary looking on purpose, because we don't want people to go into the old K range area.
Right.
It would be more of just a notification if you see anything out of the ordinary, contact.
Maybe we can get some of those scary signs to ward off the ATVers.
Well, I mean, would it be within, like, would it?
They go looking for it.
They
Would it be
just
somewhat
do
accurate?
selfies with those signs. That would just attract
I might
them.
do a selfie with those.
Would it be
replacing
somewhat
signs every
accurate to say that, even if it is the teeny chance, and again, not to just do it for the sake of doing it, but it still would still be an accurate sign, right?
I think signage
And
is a
would
good
it
idea.
be, would we be now liable for that? I think we would be, right, if we were to hear this now and then something did happen. I know I'm being an alarmist, I'm being crazy, but if we would, I don't know if that would
Well,
relieve
yeah,
us of
there's
some of that.
liability because it is your property.
Right, and there's a very small chance, very, very small chance.
I think signage is, appropriate signage is a fine idea.
Yeah,
We can definitely, that's something we do, and we can
Okay.
work with you on what you want it to say.
And how long would the annual magnetometer sweeps go on?
In perpetuity. Yeah. I mean, at some point, we might say, look, we're not really finding anything. We want to either start doing it once every 2 years, maybe decrease the frequency. But initially, we would do every year.
on your own schedule, or do we request or prompt you for these?
We would schedule it, and I could let you know if that's a good time to do it. We could, again, we could work together if you think a certain time is better of the year. It's usually after the frost is.
After the spring thaw is when we
Yeah.
want to go out
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And they may need to time this with the other property owners, so to conserve resources.
Right, yeah, we'd want to do it in one fell swoop.
Sure.
If you do this every year, does that mean saplings and anything else that may have grown over the last year is cut to the ground again?
Oh, not
They
for
don't-
not for just the regular magnetometer survey.
Yeah, there's no
It's just
vegetation
We don't
disturbance
have
for
to
that.
remove anything for that. We
Yeah.
just walk through it.
It's high-end metal detecting is what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's,
Were we to make a motion on the land use controls, including the annual magnetometer sweep, how would that be worded?
I would
Motion to
just, what's that?
Motion to approve?
Yeah, as worded in the, under land use controls and annual monitoring. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, are we ready for a motion?
Well, let's see what kind of a consensus we have going for what we want to do. What are you thinking?
I don't have a particular problem with it. I just think that we need to also bring town council into it to make sure that we've covered all of the bases that he would understand far better than us.
I don't see any reason even for signing. I think the occasional magnetometer check may well be worthwhile, even if it's just a matter of a CYA action. It doesn't, I'm not hearing anything here that suggests to me there's any actual hazardous risk out there. I would be more concerned about the potential of some kind of, finding of hazardous toxic materials up in there. But you've surveyed the better part of that piece of property without finding any. I would love to see one sample done, at the sort of the extreme edge of that, near the road or something, but that would be about the only thing that seems to me to be really worthwhile.
Yeah. Sir, are you referring
But
to like
even,
a-
even that, you wouldn't expect that kind of exposure from a temporary place where weaponry was stored for a while.
Right.
It's not as though you had some 40-year-old cases of dynamite or something out there. It's not something that's going to leak easily. So I don't have any great concerns, except that I do think it probably should go past town council.
Sure.
Like, for example, the signage, maybe we're just stuck with that. I don't really see much reason to alarm people about that. No one is signing that it's their private property, the federal, even the Briarwood hasn't put anything up. Even Orendo, although they do sign their property on the other side of the road, don't have any signs on that. I go through that area a lot, I walk it a lot. I wouldn't be much in favor of complicating the situation by putting up signs. You're just getting calls about it. What's going on out here? It's not.
Right.
But the town
some red
council,
flags around that.
yeah, the town council may have different feelings. So
Yeah, I'll certainly run it by town council and get his feedback.
yeah, I think it'd be better if we waited for that.
And they're smaller, would there be more smaller, just informative signs, not like a big, not like, one of our conservation area signs saying, warning, don't come in here? Are they more discreet or,
A lot of the ones we do for these types of sites have like a stoplight on it, and it just says recognize, report, retreat, and it, gives a little brief description about what to look for, maybe a picture of what if you see this, and then contact numbers.
Yeah, those are common in just wide open, like desert areas in Southern California, because no one really knows for sure exactly where someone might have dropped a practice bomb or whatever.
Right. Do they seem to alarm people, Dale? I know it's.
Well, out there, you're used to seeing them.
Yeah.
And you do sometimes see signs that make it clear that you don't want to go in there, too.
Yeah.
So, the public who's outdoors a lot is aware of all that. Around here, I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of such a thing, so.
We'll run it by town council.
Is there a stock contract, if you wish, or document that the Air Force has for every time you establish a LUC? But this, the parameters, I mean, there's got to be some kind of a legal document that covers all of these activities, and it sounds like you do this often.
We actually don't. We, on base, we tried to put a lock on our landfills, but, well, it became a who actually owns the parcel issue, going back again to the property ownership. So we ended up just doing a notice of landfill operations and filed it with the real property office on the base. We have these, we call them luck areas off base for our groundwater plumes, but there's usually, the boards of health usually have a moratorium on well drilling, and that's part of our overall luck, but we don't physically place a luck on that property. So this is a very similar situation. We have land use control, luck implementation plans, so we'll have the plan, it defines where these luck areas are, but there's no one standard prescribed way of doing it. Yeah, so it's, it can be tailored, I guess, is why.
It would just seem like there's some kind of a blanket overall boilerplate, and then the specifics of your situation. Here, it's this way, another location, another base, it's a little bit different, but it seems to me there ought to be a holistic, lawyer kind of document that then can be tailored to this specific site. This is got to be done here. Most of it's going to be done probably consistently, but it would seem to me that, given the number of bases and the number of issues, that the Air Force must have an overarching kind of a document and then tailor it depending upon the specifics of these sites.
Yeah. I'll check into it. I'm not aware of any, but I'll definitely check into it. And it might be more with the formerly used defense sites, since those are all off base, as opposed to...
Or any of the abutters to the bases. I mean, it would seem to me that bases all over the country must have issues similar to this, where ordinance may be not where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, normally when they're all off base, they fall into this formerly used defense site category, FUDs, and Army Corps manages those. Did you have?
I was just going to say that all of these sites typically follow the CERCLA process. So those documents along the way, the proposed plan, the decision document, those all document what's going to be done, and they're all signed off by the appropriate authorities, the state, the EPA, or the EPA.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we do a decision document. The LUCs are part of a decision, but there's no specific LUC document other than our implementation plan.
Okay, well, if you happen to find one that seems like there's sort of a close example, that might be helpful to Drew when he goes to the town council. You could just say, here's what we're talking about. It looked like this.
Okay.
Is this something we can condition to on town council's commentary and approval, or is this something that has
I
to,
think we'll just wait and see what we hear back.
because they have several more properties to deal with, and our decision might set the tone for future decisions?
That's a good point, but they
Given,
won't be acting really fast.
What's that?
I wouldn't worry about someone like Briarwood acting quickly on this.
Probably not.
No.
I mean, I support it, but I just don't understand that land use control. Seems to me that there needs to be a legal presentation that says the Air Force would like us as private landowners abutting your property. We would like to do thus and so to protect us and to protect you, and this is what the words are that we would like you to agree to. And then we can talk about, we don't like this, and you don't like what we're recommending and so forth, normal negotiations. But at this point, there's nothing on the table from the Air Force.
Right.
My personal opinion, not this commission, my personal opinion is that that's a business kind of thing that you run across all the times in business. You want to do something, or you're recommending we do something, put it in writing, lay it out in front of me, I'll have a chance to look at it, I'll have my attorney look at it, and we'll sit down and we'll iron it out.
Sure. And I'm sure it would come to that. I just wanted to come to kind of explain what the issue is initially, and then answer whatever questions you have, and then we can formalize it in some sort of agreement.
But well, it does appear as though there is a rough consensus, at least, on the commission.
Oh, absolutely.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, that something along the lines of that annual check after the frost heave time is gone would be adequate from our point of view. That just seems to be where we're sort of going. So, except that we don't know what the town council will make of it.
But all those things, the end of things, should be spelled out so that we can turn to Drew, and Drew, just like we check the amount of sand that gets deposited on beaches because of the requirement for doing so. You know, Drew knows where the sand gets dumped, how many cubic yards got dumped this year. Is that what they committed to? Yes, they did. And it would seem to me the same thing here in regards to scanning the land to make sure that in fact it was done and it's well within the range of acceptability.
Sure.
Well, they have outlined their technique and what they did, which would, I assume, be the repeated survey every year in detail.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
And, yeah, so as part of this overarching lock too, we could I was planning on sending a letter annually, just reminding everybody, because people change, right? So send a letter to the commission, town, whoever you want, town council, just reminding folks that this ordinance area is here. We've done a magnetometer sweep. We haven't found anything for the past 5 years. These kinds of things would go into that letter.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's. the
But you're
kind of-
right, we do need to have some sort of an agreement up front. Yeah. Yep.
So I don't know that we need a motion to say that, you know, we're supportive of this action. And what we need is something to come back to us that we can act upon.
For tonight, no.
Not tonight,
No
not
motion,
tonight.
no motions.
No motion, that's what I'm saying. This is an
Right.
information
Okay.
session.
And I don't think they're expecting a motion. It's really just like Rose said, this is an FYI.
Yep.
You know, at this point, and then,
Yeah.
you know, once we get more information,
Yeah.
guidance, then.
Now ultimately, if an agreement like this is entered into, that won't be us doing it anyway, will it? Won't the town
No.
council be involved in that? I mean, that would be going with the town.
Yeah,
This land use agreement wouldn't be.
with your blessing,
We would just, we would recommend in favor.
your
of it.
endorsement, if you will.
I
Yeah.
said we didn't have an objection.
In that case, is there anyone opposed to the concept of the land use controls?
I'd rather
I mean,
I'd just rather wait until we're.
Exactly.
I mean, it makes sense to me that we interact with the Air Force on this and before we get, take anything to the town or make any action. Drew can go with something coherent to the town when the time comes and
Yeah.
just make
I'm sure it can be
make
in
it simpler.
in a timeline where, the other landowners, it'll be within a reasonable, so you can make it, more efficient. So I'll reach out to town council,
Yes, that's-
sooner than later.
Yep.
Get the feedback, and by the next meeting, I'll have all the information that you'll need for.
So, just for the record, we greatly appreciate the relationship that the Concom has had with the Air Force over the years, over the whole cleanup issue. It's been great.
Thank you.
I mean, considering what a large organization you are, it's not that it's been totally smooth at all times, but it's,
This past issue that we had, we finally got it straightened out. It took
Yeah,
a while,
I
though.
was just about to mention, I just wanted to thank Rose and the assistance you've had from John, John especially, that you all know that I sent out the email for the funding, and finalization of the funding monitoring and maintenance agreement. We'll use that terminology,
Yeah.
whatever works.
Whatever works.
It has been finalized and signed, and so we're ready to go on the Upper Quashnet restoration. And, really been very appreciative of your endurance and
your
faithfulness and patience. And
well, the thing
Yeah,
that strikes me is that the Air Force, appears to be sincerely interested in doing the right thing here, as opposed to
We are.
just, filling in some legal forms, getting out as quickly as you can. You appear to be interested in seeing that this whole restoration goes well and is overall works well for us, and, been very flexible. Greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very
Because it
much.
could be a great area. I mean, we can go from having kind of a mess over there to having a really nice area for the future.
Yeah, we were making great progress, and then PFAS came up, so
Yeah.
now we're back to the investigation phase. And that one's turning out to be quite a challenge for us.
Yeah.
That whole area has been a great resource for Air Force personnel as well. I've talked to a lot of Air Force people who've, remember fishing and whatnot through there decades ago.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's good for the town and the Air Force, I think.
Good.
Well, I guess it's not the Air Force anymore.
Well, it's Air Force, Coast Guard, Army National Guard, Air National Guard, VA. Yeah.
Multi-use now.
Complex. Okay, great.
Well, thank
Thank
you
you
for
very
your
much.
time.
Thank you.
Before I forget, just to hop to the next pre-post agenda item is the approval of meeting minutes, so I don't leave that out. It's a quick item to check off the list. This is approval of the meeting minutes of April 25th, 2019, and we do have a quorum of the commissioners present tonight who are at that meeting: Dale McKay, Brad Sweet, and Tom O'Neill. So only you three will be involved in the motion, second, and
Do
approval.
we need to make any changes to a motion or to the minutes as a result of this next item on your list? Isn't the Simons Narrow Road item that you're suggesting that we make a change to our decision?
Yeah, but it wouldn't be reflective of the minutes. The minutes are what they are.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. I would move that we approve the minutes of April 25th, 2019 as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Minutes are approved.
Thank you. So yes, I wanted to, after this, you can do the update after this next agenda item. So 0 Simons Narrows Road, as the commission recalls, Chad, I'll give you just a brief background on this. This was at the last meeting, an RDA request for Simons Narrows Road, and I actually have, you know what, I'm done with the visual.
Well, what's interesting, I did not get to the site originally. I
Yeah.
felt terribly naked in the meeting. And when this came out this afternoon, I jumped in the car and drove over
Yeah.
there. Now I think I'll understand the discussion
good.
a whole lot better than we did a week or so ago.
So this was, the project is a Simons Narrows Road. Portions of it are actually a dirt road that run through Mashpee River Woodlands, as you know. That's one of the trails. Then it comes out across Mashpee Neck Road and goes all the way to Shoestring Bay. So that last portion that hits up, that abuts Shoestring Bay, is a privately owned parcel, and it has a dock and fixed pier that was apparently built by the military, based on the description. It is a very
It's a very rugged,
rugged and fortified structure.
well-constructed dock.
So that last portion of Simons Narrows is 2 sets of boulders that run across the beginning of that last section of Simons Narrows, and then another set of boulders just to keep cars out of there. It is a privately owned parcel, and the applicant had come forward with an RDA to request to do some investigation work and vegetation clearance to reveal the asphalt, the full extent of the road layout.
This is,
Yep.
if I'm looking at Mashpee River Woodlands, this is in what quadrant of the south?
So this would be on the north quadrant. Simons Narrows Road actually runs along the northern border of the Mashpee River Woodlands east. Yeah, and then it transitions across the street from Mashpee Neck Road into a paved road with residences. And then where it terminates at Shoestring Bay is the last parcel where this dock and pier. So over the years, it just hasn't been used at all, and you've got pretty significant vegetation overgrowth, including trees that are like 15 to 20 feet tall, if not taller, on the road shoulders. So not all of the road parcel where the road is within jurisdiction, but a pretty good portion is. And then they wanted to do some maintenance issues with the dock and pier, which were very straightforward and really didn't even require a permit request, replacing planks and railings and things like that. So the road does slope down towards the water. It comes to like a landing and a clearing area that's, again, all pavement. So that the request specifically was to clear away, do some investigation to find out where the road layout is, clear all the vegetation off the road layout, and then come back to the commission at a later time to do some drainage improvements. And, the anticipation is to start using this parcel again for the dock and pier. And everything was presented as far as, where the road layout is on the plan, where the extent of clearing is to take place, and there was some on the plan of record showing an erosion control running across the road before you hit the buffer zone to wetland resource areas, or into the sensitive area. And it has bordering vegetated wetland, salt marsh, and then land under ocean. So the commission ended up approving the RDA with the understanding that there was going to be further work forthcoming through another permit request. It would be a notice of intent because it's a road layout and drainage has to meet DEP stormwater standards. Then I got a call from the contractor who was at the meeting, Ron Gangemi, who had some concerns about he's the contractor that was chosen by the landowner to do the clearing, and he relayed to me that he didn't think that you needed to do a lot of investigation. He thought that the road layout, he knows where it is. He said it's pretty obvious, and you don't need to do all of this clearing right now. His concern was basically that because of the sloping nature of the road leading down to the wetland, that you clear away all this vegetation and you've got this kind of like roll, erosion control roll at the bottom. How long is it going to stay cleared? All of this debris and whatnot that's going to be inevitably washing down there, who's going to check on the erosion control and what frequency are those checks happening? None of that information was brought to you at the meeting. And when he mentioned those two things, that raised a red flag with me immediately. Not that I think the applicant is trying to get away with anything here, it's just that the conditions of the site, that when you remove this vegetation off the road layout and you expose nothing but pavement, then you're going to get stormwater runoff coming down, and you've got one layer of erosion control running across, the road layout, and no information about who's going to monitor it, how often they're going to monitor it, nor any indication of timeline as to when they're going to come forward with drainage improvements. So those things combined, are concerning. So I called up the applicant and I issued a verbal stop work order, and I said this needs to come back before the commission so we can get more information on these issues before work starts. So that's the bless you. That's the gist of the long and short of it. Basically, is we don't know how long it's going to remain exposed like that without drainage improvements, and we have no idea who's checking up on the erosion control during that time, which is unspecified, to make sure that they're effective and you don't get runoff and washout into the resource areas. So things that I should have thought about at the meeting. I didn't think about it because it just seemed to me like it was going to be a transition fairly quickly from when they exposed the road to doing drainage improvements, but that was never really spelled out as far as a timeline. So because of that, and no one's here tonight to present anything. They're just going to revise and come in with a new application, and in the meantime, no work is going to proceed until you get that information.
You could almost see, it is a relatively steep.
It's a continuous slope. It doesn't flatten out until you hit
and they're going to go in there
wetland,
to do discovery, to clear. There's asphalt perfectly visible as you work your way down.
You can see it
through
down the center line.
As they try to widen that out to 10 or 12 feet wide, they're going to be disturbing all kinds of things. And then all you need is a good rainstorm, and all of that is going to end up in the resource area.
Right.
So there's no question that they need to plan for that.
Yep.
And so forth. So.
Yeah.
So, what did we learn? I'm just a little bit concerned about the fact that we did issue a ruling.
Yes.
And if we messed up, I'm not sure that that's on them at this point. So,
No.
what is their reaction to me?
Well, when
you
I spoke with
contacted
the lot
them?
owner, obviously he was frustrated to hear that I didn't want work to proceed. And he did ask about, well, the commission, approved this, and so I don't understand why, now I can't do it. And I explained to him that, under the bylaw, and I was citing the bylaw directly, that if the commission encounters a situation, whether it's been issued a permit or it's been done without a permit or whatever the scenario is, and you see something that may result in an adverse impact to a resource area, whether it's an RDA, an order of conditions, or a violation, you have every right to step in and impose additional conditions to ensure that the resource areas aren't adversely impacted. And so that's what I explained over the phone. It wasn't well received, obviously, but he understood eventually that, so we're not trying to put a stop to your project. We're trying to protect the resource areas and make sure the project conforms to the Wetlands Protection Act. And you are empowered to revoke, modify, or require additional information on any permit that comes across your agenda at any time. So I do want to emphasize that and not have you feel that, well, we issued it and it's too late. That's not the case. So,
Especially when given the value of Mashpee River Woodlands.
yeah. So,
But you're a good, I mean, you're a good distance away from what I know is the woodlands.
oh yeah, it's not Mashpee River Woodlands. This is Shoestring Bay. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's a good distance away. You
Yeah.
got to go through extensive residential property
Yeah,
between.
It's pretty well separated out.
Where we
Yeah.
know it and so forth. But, I mean, it all pitches down.
Yeah,
from
it's a
the Willow
continuous
Bend Gate.
gradual slope, but with
It's
pavement.
a gradual slope.
Yeah.
In fact, it probably continues beyond the gate area, and it's all asphalt in there, and
That's probably a pretty large contribution of stormwater to that whole area that
absolutely.
shoots
That's
down.
what probably keeps the asphalt visible, is it continues to wash
Yeah.
through there,
Exactly, yeah.
taking everything in its way.
Yeah, yeah. So chances are you'll probably see something on the next agenda, if not the following. And again, I don't think we're impeding on any use of this lot. He can access it anytime he wants. He can remove the boulders. It's not impeding use of the dock and pier in any way whatsoever.
Does
This
he
is
tie
just,
boats to this dock, do you know?
there weren't any out there.
There wasn't any
when I-
there, yeah, but there was a fisherman there,
Yeah. It is used by,
and he says he's been fishing off of that dock for probably 20 years.
yeah, it's been used quite heavily. That's probably why the guy wants to, make modifications and make it known that someone actually owns the parcel. Otherwise, probably, most people think it's town-owned or publicly accessible. So,
Eventually it would be.
yeah, exactly. Adverse possession.
Yeah.
So,
No action needed tonight.
no. No, just to bring you up to speed. So, Caitlin's going to have some updates for you next for conservation land work.
Sure. So back in March and April, it's been a while since I think I've been here. I did some vernal pool certification work with the AmeriCorps at Johns Pond and Santuit Pond, and I believe we did collect sufficient data to certify them. I still need to submit the data to the state, but it was a great learning experience for them and myself alike. And this gentleman that I've been working with as a land steward was also there and had done it in the past, and he was very helpful. So it was just great to see how active these areas are, which it really isn't always readily evident until you get in there with your muck boots. So it was a very informative, and hopefully they will be able to be certified with what we collected.
Is there a checklist that you go through before you'd even bother them to go through the certification?
Oh yeah, there's the
Check to make
guidelines,
sure that-
and oh yeah, you don't just go in there willy-nilly just looking for random things. Nope. No, there's
frog,
a
it's
field.
good.
Yeah, exactly. There's a field guide. But in Cape and in Mashpee, there's only a few of the obligate species that exist here. So it's yellow spotted salamanders and wood frogs are the two obligate species. If you find evidence of their breeding in a vernal pool, it's pretty much a done deal that this is a vernal pool and it can be certified as such. Just an interesting note, fortunately we have a bylaw that protects vernal pools. These won't particularly affect any further permitting or anything because they're just within the parcels already protected. But the state doesn't have as strict protections for vernal pools, so it's really great that we do have our own bylaw that does afford them extra protection. That's kind of an aside, but I just wanted to mention that. It's great that we do have that. So springtime pollinator garden maintenance is going on, just adding back the pollinator boxes and the signage, and we're adding a few new plants into Jehu and Pickerel, and we'll mulch a community garden soon. We also weeded there. So, always constant work with them, but I think at least a couple of them are coming to a point where they'll be a lot less, or be fairly minimal maintenance, but there's still a little bit of a way to go on a couple of the other gardens. So doing our best on it, but there are plenty of species growing in there, so it's going fairly well. The herring count program is also underway. It goes from April 1st to June 1st. We had the 2 programs in March, and we have the kids out this year, so it's great to be able to have all the counters be able to look at all the data, who was there last, what did they get. I think it's been really fun and informative, and it's a much better approach than just kind of going out there and having no idea what anyone else had done or had seen. So it's very successful so far this year, and it's great. Mashpee, it seems like it'll probably be another banner year for that run. Santua, it's also hosting high numbers, but again, not great passage, which is all being addressed. And Quashnet is, fairly slow per usual. Never really has a lot of fish there, so, and it's not an historic run either. But still plugging away at the constant maintenance there, cleaning the baffles. It gets clogged frequently, so just helping Drew out with general maintenance as well. There's a little small pile at John's Pond. I'd like to do a cleanup. I tried to schedule something for Earth Day, but it got rained out. But otherwise, dumping has been fairly not much of an issue. I think I do need to I think the doggy kiosk probably should put one down at John's Pond, because I can tell that it needs to be there.
Doggy bags all over the place?
Yeah. No bags.
No bags, just doggy
Yeah,
bags.
just dog. But generally speaking, though, it's good to see a lot of people taking in their own hands to clean up the areas and use the roadside trash, and just, they tell me that they do cleanups in general just as much as they can in their own parcels for the land steward. So just generally speaking, that isn't a huge issue at this time, which is great. Unfortunately, though, in the spring, you do seem to get landscape debris I want to get a handle on that. The landscape debris in the parking lots is kind of not acceptable for people to do that. So I think they think it's why it's there, but it's not. But again, not really a huge issue, just something to get a handle on. I've been assisting DNR with shell bags for their upcoming oyster propagation, or at least, the seeding of these bags, just per annual events there. So last Friday they had success with some volunteers, which they're just trying to inform you of that they're trying to implement their own volunteer program. And last year they had 10 people come, and it was really great. A very big help too. We got a lot of shell bags done. It's extremely tedious to do otherwise, just with a few people. So. Just a few other points here. Just Mashpee National Wildlife Refuge news. I know I've been probably toting this for quite some time, but the booklet is nearing completion. The history booklet and the trail maps. The videos for the trail maps are almost done. It's been a long time coming, but just to see and hear about all of the wildlife sightings, and with the bald eagles especially, it's just, I think it'll be very timely for this to be released, and for people to appreciate how much this open space matters for restoring wildlife populations that really, hadn't been here for a long time. So it's really great. It's just really great to see, and I'm very proud to work in a town that takes conservation so seriously.
Here.
There's also a balloon ban we're working on for the Environmental Oversight Committee for the town. Currently Chatham and Nantucket and I think Orleans all have bans, and a few states have had bans, at least towns, and then Australia's had a couple bans, so it's becoming a bit more fashionable, to not...
Ban, can you define ban for me? Like
to
music
ban the
ban?
use, possession,
Ban on
sale of helium
Yeah.
balloons. Huh?
Ban, a prohibition.
A prohibition on balloons.
Oh, I'm sorry, I heard a D.
No, not musical. No, just that it's extremely irresponsible to use them, especially in a coastal community after everything that we know about how dangerous they are. There really doesn't seem to be a lot of backlash because I think people know that it's a small thing we can do, but it makes a huge difference to not add more balloons into the environment. I mean, they're just floating everywhere anyways right now anyways. They're coming up on the rack and...
They're now stationary way up in a tree someplace.
Oh, that too, yeah. But eventually they all come down, and so I don't anticipate a lot of issue with that. Just for a little background, we've already done the single-use, or on other bans, we've done the plastic bag ban bylaw, and we're working, I think it's in, at the AG office right now, the polystyrene and plastic straw ban. So small little changes that, it really does all... It really isn't responsible of each individual to do these, to really reduce your consumption of these materials, but at least these bans help along the way, at least somewhat, and gets the word out. So, and I believe that that's all I had for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
No.
So, just a brief update on the Osprey platform that you approved for 77 Whippoorwill Circle at the last meeting.
Right.
This is a small piece of conservation land that's coastal off of Whippoorwill Circle in South Mashpee, and a couple of residents, Cass Costa, who's a former commissioner, is one of them, and Marlene Sisianka, who also lives on Whippoorwill Circle, requested the commission to use this land to have an osprey platform constructed because they saw an osprey trying to build a nest on chimneys in the area and boat. Now they got trying to build one on a boat, and so they really want to get a nest established, a platform established, which it's an ideal location for one. So I just did inform them because it wasn't really specified. The purpose of the request was to authorize use of the land for the Osprey platform, but we didn't get into specifics like construction methodology, who's going to do it, and I think they were under the assumption they were going to do it, but I wanted to make sure that whoever is going to do it has done it before, knows what they're doing, because salt marsh is very fragile, and, we don't want several attempts at an Osprey platform. We want one attempt and it done right, so to minimize intrusion into the salt marsh as part of that construction process. So I did reach out to Karen and Tom Doyle, who own a company called Marine Tech here in Mashpee. They're marine contractors, and they said they would be willing to build the Osprey platform. And I think it was mentioned at the last meeting that Wacoit Bay Research Reserve might have some materials that they can use. So I did inform Cass and Marlene of that. I haven't heard a response yet because they did say they were going to pay for it. But I wanted to see that, if the expense of having a marine contractor do the construction, if we could assist with that cost, if they're going to, charge for it. I don't know if they are. I didn't say, can you do this for free? I just put it out there because I know they have experience in it. But with your blessing, if we can add to the cost, contribute to the cost if there is one, if you're okay with that.
Well,
So I would appreciate
what's
it.
the number?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll find out, and then you don't have to make a motion now. But
Right, let's-
once I get the information, but just to gauge your, take your temperature on
The
that.
osprey nests do you figure we have within Mashpee?
Not enough. When you see one on a telephone pole, that's just one that's that's looking for a house, looking for a nest.
They don't. I mean, they don't nest in trees because of the attacks from smaller mammals, raids on the nest, and that's why they choose these kind of isolated locations, rooftop chimneys, tops of boats, top of a pile on a dock, because it's out over the water, so it's a more ideal spot for them strategically, but also raccoons and other types of animals, skunks will raid osprey nests if they're built too close to a tree or in a tree itself. It's a risk that some ospreys, have adapted to and don't continue to build nests in trees. So
Boy, I've never seen the one that I know is near us, but I don't know where it would be if not in a tree.
I have one right near me at the Woodlands.
Yeah. Not saying it happens all, sometimes the nest will go undisturbed, but for the majority, and this is just what I've been told, is that, you know, they prefer these isolated locations, and for the most part, that's what you see, you know, because there's certainly no shortage of trees to build a nest in, but they're using chimneys, they're using boats, they're using piles.
Power lines
Power
in the
lines,
case of the Woodlands.
yeah, another one, so.
But it is
that tells you
interesting
something.
that I have a post with a platform on it, probably 25 feet into the marsh behind my house. When I bought it, they said the previous owner put it up, and he was a volunteer over at Wacoit,
Yeah.
and it's never attracted anything.
Maybe
Yeah.
that other pair is extra aggressive or something.
There is something about territoriality,
You know,
how
that-
close
it's not that-
platforms are.
it's not
They
that
might be
close.
pretty, they might be.
They saw
could-
me
they
out
could
there.
be.
one-
It's
They saw me
fully
feeding my
speculative.
birds or something, and they said, I don't
Yeah.
want to build next to that guy.
Maybe they never filed an NOI.
I think there, I actually, but to answer your question more accurately, I think there might be some websites that do track it. I'm curious myself as to what's the official number or unofficial number of
Yeah.
how many
Only reason I
posts
ask
there are.
is the more the better,
Curious.
but you're
Yeah,
also setting yourself up that if we pay 50%, 10%, whatever the number is, of that particular one, then every time somebody else wants one put up, we're setting ourselves up for 10 or 20 or 50% of the cost of another.
If it's a small number,
Well,
that's
keep
not
in
really.
mind, this is also our property. Not every osprey nest is going to be on conservation land.
Okay.
Yeah,
In fact, this is one of the
That's the
few
answer.
conservation lands that's actually on the coast. Most of them are inland.
Right.
So, you know,
Okay, so that's the answer.
yeah.
Yeah,
We're
it
going to
wouldn't.
pay
It
something because
wouldn't
it's our land.
We're not
if
contributing.
it's not a
to
huge
it.
amount of money and it's going to be on conservation land, it doesn't worry me too much that we'd be doing more than one.
Yeah.
What
I
type,
don't-
Anticipate that.
what type of answer are you looking for from us tonight?
Nothing, until I get a cost estimate. I just wanted to see if you would be okay with that, because it wasn't really, you know, they did indicate they were paying for everything, but because I added in this caveat, if you will, about contractor who has experience, because I think they were anticipating doing the work themselves. I don't know if they have experience. They didn't relay that to us, so I just want to make sure we're not traipsing all over the salt marsh trying to figure it out when someone can be hired to do it fast, right, and, you know, least intrusive. So
Sure.
that was just my concern about that. Is
Good deal.
and it wasn't really discussed. So last item, the last couple of items, just a brief update. You already heard about the Air Force funding, and we also got unanimous approval for both articles under the town meeting warrant for CPA funding. $320,000 for the upper Quashnet. That'll be added to the $884,000 from the Air Force. That should cover planning, permitting, and construction. Anything left over we'll get with grant funding, but it covers at least 90%, if not the entire cost of the project.
Right.
So very excited about that, and also 240,000 for the Childs River that was requested through us as co-applicants with the Falmouth Rod and Gun Club for their project, which is well underway as far as planning and permitting goes.
You know,
So-
what actually would that money is that money to be used for?
The,
I wasn't clear on exactly what.
the
how that-
320,000 for Upper Quashnet
No, for the Childs River.
for planning and permitting. Yeah, I think I can get more specific information as far as what they're planning on specifically using the money for, but it's still the planning and permitting phase expenses. Yeah. But I'll get more specific information on that.
Right.
We're also trying to figure out, you know, how we're going to do billing, because they're a third party leasing the land from us, so we'll figure that out with accounting. as far
But
as-
now, is that, I mean, are they looking at the upper bogs or just still, they're talking, that money is going still to the ones that's,
This will be
main-
for the portion of Garner Farley that are in Mashpee. Yes, yeah, it wouldn't be for any portion of Childs River and Falmouth. It has to be for Mashpee. A CPA wouldn't be able to authorize otherwise.
no, but I mean, I forget the name of the bogs, but there's a
Garner.
large bog that's of primary interest.
That's Garner, yeah.
And then there's some smaller bogs
Farley,
further up.
which is the sliver that we own the top fraction of the Farley bog.
All right, but then isn't there another bog, a small area that's above both of those? No, okay.
Nope, Garner and Farley are the only two,
Okay.
and the river runs between the two
Right.
bogs, yeah,
Right.
yep. Yep. And the
It's
last,
just that magical mystery pool there that we're talking about, basically.
Yeah, we'll see that hopefully filled in and disappear. 'Cause the only thing it's hosting right now is some very alien-like plants that I'm not quite sure what
Don't
they
look
are.
like they belong on this planet.
Yeah, they look.
And there are
otherworldly.
fish in there too, which is pretty
Color's
spooky.
very interesting too.
I wouldn't want to eat one of those.
The last thing, and it's not on the agenda, but it's just something I wanted to update the commission on, is that we did have a meeting with NRCS investigation team about the Santuit ladder last week. And they interviewed everybody who has been, involved with the ladder, from marine fisheries to myself, some folks from Barnstable, and anyone who really was involved with the planning, permitting, construction, and after observation of the fish ladder. So from their standpoint, and this is, should come as no surprise when it comes to request for government funding, is, they have to, there's been no real hard data to back up the observations about fish passage, the infrequency of fish passage at Santuit. You've got reams of data from volunteer counters who have all the same observations about thousands of fish in the bottom, many fish getting washed back down and only a small select few getting into the pond. So, and you've got that repeated over and over again through a number of observations over the years since we started the count program in that location. That carries a lot of weight. Also, the report from Dick Quinn, who had the final design on the ladder, indicating that he, in his PowerPoint presentation, that there is a turbulence issue that's affecting fish passage. Another big ticket item for the NRCS to consider. So what they're deliberating now, after they've got all this feedback, is whether it's going to be a full restoration of the ladder, a full new design, or an amendment, a permanent amendment to the existing design, whether it's, the thoughts were, increasing the weir heights to increase the depth in the pools, maybe adding a weir at the top or the bottom. There's all kinds of ideas. What Marine Fisheries and myself tend to agree on, with the understanding we're not engineers and it needs engineering work to find out if it's feasible, is to retrofit in a fish ladder inside, blow out the weir walls, eliminate the pools entirely, put a denial style or a wooden baffle ladder like you see at John's Pond, and then use the other half of the existing concrete structure for a spillway, because there's no spillway. And I said, if you're going to, my feedback to NRCS, I said, if you're going to use the existing design and you're not going to redesign it, then make sure that each weir has a slot for a wooden board so we can at least adjust the heights and flow in each pool. So that was kind of the gist of the feedback. And Dale, you were there, so you know all about this. But, there was a lot of good, positive feedback from everybody. It was a good showing. And they're very thorough, these folks, as far as the questions that they asked. The big thing is, the amount of funding is really predicated on hard data and not observation. So if it's a redesign, they'll have to show through some hard data that, the fish are not getting through as anticipated. So we'll see what happens. They've already gotten back to me and said they're actually going to sending somebody else to do another site visit down there. So it's great, that they're following up like this on this issue. And we have made some changes to the ladder where the counts, I think they've been averaging in the double digits, and there's been some over 100. So the fixes that we made to put blocks in the weir notches and have that cascading flow from one pool to the next and not jetting through the weir notches has worked in accommodating fish passage better than it was before. So,
Absolutely.
It occurs to me that this is kind of an extreme case, but in general, if you're looking at modifications, even just adjustments as are possible, for example, the Johns Pond one, having really good data quickly would be nice. What does it cost to put an automated count for herring in?
It's very expensive and it's very high maintenance. for
it is
an electric
extremely
pump.
high
You have
maintenance.
to check it every day
Every
and turn
day.
it back to zero.
Yeah.
The
Well,
day-
that wouldn't,
and it's not,
it wouldn't automatically not be worth it in some cases.
Yeah.
maybe for Santuit with this very reason that we're speaking of. I
Especially if
think,
we
yeah.
could share it with perhaps another couple of towns. I mean, the minute you have a problem on a run, it'd be nice to be able to make changes and see what happens,
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
It
is Caitlin's done some research, and it is very expensive and very time consuming for maintenance You literally have to go out every day because it could get jammed up with debris, and all kinds of things can happen to affect it and its accuracy. So
I don't know if pit tagging would make any difference.
pit tagging might be
Probably.
an idea.
I did
It's
require
what they do at the
about this.
Coonamessett.
Pit tagging?
But they need
Yeah.
a very good reason to put the fish through that much stress, and of course to understand that the data they get back would help in the case that you're trying to make.
How does that work?
So
The
it's a
pit
little
tags?
tiny tag, like digital tag that
You're
they
just applying a bunch of tags sort of randomly, and then the next season you see them.
see the return.
Yeah, and there's different
Right.
places
So
that pick it up.
what is the amount of money involved in the
I
contract?
don't know the exact number. I just know
I
that
mean, is it a
it's-
million, 100,000?
No, it's not a million. I think it's in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands. But honestly, I'm not 100% sure what the cost is. But
Plus the manpower.
but
too.
I mean, yeah.
That's probably
I
the real
think
cost. Is
Yeah, it sounds like.
this-
time it takes to maintain it.
And to speak to the ones that do exist on Cape, which I have, and I can't recall exactly what place. I called most towns. that
Stony
have
Brook, I
them.
think, has it in Brewster.
They just mentioned that they didn't sound like it was fun to deal with, I suppose. But again, doesn't necessarily mean that it wouldn't be worthwhile, especially when hard data seems to
Right, I
be
mean, if
kind
it's,
of important
if it's
here.
semi-portable and, it could be shared as a resource with a few towns or something, a significant amount of money might be worthwhile.
Yeah, and I'm not sure.
Because we could probably get more information about a run in a matter of days than we get in a year with
Right.
this, volunteer counting thing.
Yeah.
All we do really is compare year from year. We don't really know what the actual count over is because we don't know, because there's only, people that aren't there when it's raining, they aren't there at night.
Oh yeah, right. It's,
And
it's
sometimes
only
they're-
7 a.m.,
sometimes they
7
aren't,
p.m.
you
is
know,
the time frame that they count
it's-
in.
It's not great data.
Right.
No, the margin of error is usually pretty significant, absolutely every year. Even if they had all the numbers that they could possibly get, that's still, like you're saying, I'm sure is big discrepancies.
I mean, it's well worth doing.
But if it, I guess I wouldn't want to say that would hold up everything. How much years of data would they need though, to make that even have any standing?
Yeah, well,
I don't know, I can look into it more though if you'd like, or I have collected some information on it, Dale, I can send it to you.
that'd be great.
Yeah, be happy to. Because I did look into this, because I was thinking the same thing for a few of the runs.
Oh,
and
the
just-
system,
just
I mean,
seemed like
they're-
it's extremely high it's not high permanence, not very.
There is a
But
commercial
it's-
system. I mean, it's not something that just gets done, someone prototypes or something, or it actually is a companies that sell these counts.
People are doing it.
Well, Division Marine Fisheries, I would just consult with them about it. They're the experts, and
They do
And
the
we will
install and all the details behind it.
but I can send that stuff to you guys.
That'd be great, thanks.
You're welcome. And right now, Coonamessett has pit tagging for their herring, and that's
Really?
pretty cool. They have an adopt a herring program, which I also
How do they
inquired
tag them?
about.
What do
With-
they actually use a physical tag?
Yes.
Yes, it's in. Yeah, they
It gets
implant
picked
it in
up,
the
they
fish.
set up like a detection where a couple of different spots along the river, when the fish run through, the tag gets picked up and it's recorded, and
Wow.
yeah, it's a pretty cool system they have. But it is stressful to the fish, the installation of the pit tag.
As well as the taggers.
Oh yeah, no one's having fun then. Probably.
Come here.
That's it.
So do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned.
Yeah. Hopefully next week.